welcome to the hard sell where the stick in the small bucket rattles back. Yes, it's football time again. 2024 UEFA Championship is about to begin if you're watching this on Patreon, or it's underway if you're not, or it's been and gone if you're watching in the future. Whatever your spatio-temporal relationship to this video, that's the excuse. And the host nation is Germany. So here we are in the Olympiastadion in Munich. I know they don't use this for football much anymore, but I like that netting. This is brought to you by... As I feel like I'm going to mention every time I do one of these, sponsorship wasn't really a thing in this country until the very end of the 80s, when militarism and deregulation finally shattered whatever taboo may have surrounded it. The weather was first, as we've seen, with ITV National Weather all but created for the purpose of being sponsored. Over the next decade it spread, so that almost anything anyone actually watched was paid for by some company or other. In the early days, however, it was mostly used for special things, like major sporting events. The first sponsored football tournament coverage in the UK was Italia 90 on ITV, somewhat as an experiment. There was still a certain amount of disapproval even then. Thus, the sponsorship, by the newly created, soon-to-be privatised National Power, consisted of the company's name and logo subtly worked into the ITV Sport logo and brake bumpers, and of course, this advert showing up on a regular basis.
Have you ever wondered just who is responsible for generating electricity for England and Wales? Where does the power that's working your TV right now actually come from? Well, last year, if you added together all the electricity from everyone else's power stations, it would come to this much, about 56% of the total we need. So where, you may wonder, did all the rest come from? Let me enlighten you. It came from the power stations of National Power, the biggest single generator of electricity in Britain.
It wasn't exactly the perfect compromise. The National Power logo was tiny and never to focus, making it barely noticeable, while the Purvis Stadium Tour advert, running almost every half-time, got very old very fast, quickly negating any sense of impressiveness with which it might have endowed the company. It was always a lame one compared to Power Gen anyway. ITV quickly figured out how these things were supposed to go, though. Big and showy mini adverts, 2 30 seconds long either end of the broadcast, several 10 seconds long before and after brake bumpers. That's the classic format, and it arrived fully formed in time for Euro 92. By now, what remained of ITV's football coverage was sponsored by Sega, whose Mega Drive, because that's what it was called, was arguably the most popular console in the country.
Sega, supporters of ITV's coverage of the European Championship. The greatest game of all.
Note how it opens by telling you what you're about to see in the form of a game's main menu. Or warning you in the case of St. Greasy. Neat bit of, I don't know, synergy? Maybe it's probably a buzzword for it. Whatever it is, it's neat. By the next World Cup in America, ITV's football coverage was sponsored by Panasonic, under the theme of Great Shots, which meant painting a bunch of children's faces to the flags of each participating nation.
It started with a feeling, and a dream was born in you. It's written in your eyes. You hope you'll see the dream come true.
Note the absence of England, or Scotland or Wales for that matter. And then at the end, having them pose for a photo. Saving the photo bit for after the end credits, by which time almost no one is watching anymore, meant that the great shots part of the theme was somewhat lost. But it didn't really matter, because between being on in the middle of the night and no sod having qualified but Ireland, No one bothered watching this one anyway, except the Irish, and they pieced out after round 2. Things had improved by Euro 96, not that England could fail to qualify for that one. In keeping with the extremely English flavour all round, the sponsors here were Vauxhall, who hung around ITV Sport for a while afterwards. And yes, I know they were American at the time. Their spots for Euro 96 were classy and artistic, using lots of video toaster compositing effects and a stately serif font. They were also the first in this progression to really engage with the sport itself as an advertising tool. Sega had depicted it with visual reference to their own products, and Panasonic had made some basic reference to the tournament, but here Vauxhall actively tied their product, specifically the Vectra, to the game, with a series of sponsorship plugs showing clips demonstrating qualities that could also apply to the car. Okay, so sometimes it was a stretch, but it brought the programming and the advertising together in a way that's still surprisingly hard to pull off. As I said, Vauxhall stuck around ITV's football coverage for a few years, and were still the sponsors when it came to the next World Cup in France. In marked contrast to the previous tournament, this time their sponsor messages were decidedly lowbrow, in keeping with what I imagine they perceived football supporting culture to be at the time, generally taking the form of POV vignettes from people behind the wheels of their cars, desperate to get home to watch the game.
Go on then. Come on, hurry up, the match is going to start. Come on. Right. Oh no.
These were mostly downright stupid, not to mention obnoxiously whiny.
Come on, I'm going to miss a footy, come on. Mom!
Oh, shut up, you tart.
Oh. Right. That's it.
Euro 2000's ITV sponsor was Carlsberg, also one of the tournament sponsors and official beer of the England team at that time. They went with a relatively high concept set, showing various jumpers for goalposts reenactments of famous moments from past Euros, and World Cups, oddly enough, overdubbed with the original commentary.
That's a good strong ball in front and a fantastic save by Ben. What a fantastic save by Gordon Ben.
Carlsberg, official supporter of Euro 2000.
Surprisingly high production values here. They could have just gone out to the nearest park in Shepherd's Bush or whatever, but they seem to have gone to the trouble of doing some fairly extensive location scouting.
Oh, here's Gascoigne. Gascoigne, he can finish it here! Gascoigne! 2-0! Would you believe it?
Carlsberg, official supporter of Euro 2000.
Not to mention some fairly classy cinematography. It doesn't make these things particularly interesting or memorable, but it's nice that they made the effort.
Swept it wide here from Muren, played a lovely early ball in towards Van Basten. Oh! Tremendous goal!
Carlsberg, official supporter of Euro 2000.
By contrast, for the 2002 World Cup, ITV went with Travelex, a chain of high-class bureau de change. And they showed all the imagination that must have gone into choosing their name, with a set of sponsorship announcements not entirely unlike Carlsberg's.
Beckham now to Owen, and here's another Owen run. He's going to worry them again. It's a great run by Michael Owen, and he might finish it up.
The World Cup on ITV, sponsored by Travelex.
Except that instead of restaging classic moments in a sort of sport as part of our shared heritage kind of way, they just flatly regurgitated them with their logo at the end. I do appreciate their moment of silence after England went out in the quarter-final, though. Possibly strapped for cash, ITV seemed to have made less effort than usual for Euro 2004. They mostly used UEFA's generic graphics and packaging, although they did have their own title sequence, and didn't bother with their own sponsors, instead going into and out of breaks with messages from various of the tournament's actual commercial partners, like Carlsberg again.
This programme is sponsored by Carlsberg and JVC, UEFA Euro 2004 sponsors.
As these were made as generic fillers intended to speak to the population of the entire continent, they were necessarily bland and unmemorable.
McDonald's, official provider of player escorts.
And the hamburgers are shit as well. For the 2006 World Cup, they compromised. Their own coverage in specific was sponsored by EDF Energy, the British subsidiary of the French Electricity Board that now owns most of our old electricity boards, because monetarism. Their messages were simple slow-motion shots of celebrated fans, because energy, you see.
Where do they get their energy from?
EDF Energy.
Unfortunately, they were all accompanied by that one line.
Where do they get their energy from?
EDF Energy.
Which got extremely tedious and then annoying as the tournament progressed.
Where do they get their energy from?
EDF Energy.
Speaking of tedious and annoying, ITV also had sponsor messages from the official beer of the World Cup, which that time around was Budweiser. And for a tournament hosted in Germany, that feels like it should have been more of a scandal than it was, if not an outright blasphemy. You couldn't have gone with Beck's, or Holsten, or Lowenbrau, or fucking Hofmeister. At least that pretended to be German. But no, Budweiser it was, and of course, despite the Teutonic name, it is of course highly American. And they leaned right in there with the sponsor blips for ITV.
I'm Brad Lascarbo.
And I'm Hal Butchgrass.
Seeing some mind-bending, pants-ripping, jaw-dropping soccer action.
Basically an American Roy and HG, but not funny.
Giddy up, folks. I'm Soccer Sheriff Brad Lascarbo here with my trusty deputy.
Hop along, Hal Butchgrass.
I suppose they might have been, had they been given jokes.
4-4-2, 5-3-3, 4-5-1, 3-5-2.
Formations, Hal?
Sudoku, Brad.
Funny jokes, I mean. But there you are. Euro 2008 was another miserable one where no one from this country qualified. Even Ireland didn't make it. Perhaps for this reason, ITV again didn't solicit any sponsors of their own, going instead with the UEFA sponsors, Continental tyres, and some soft drink or other.
Präsentiert von Coca-Cola und Continental.
Yes, well spotted, that was in German. I couldn't find them in English. They use basically the same spots continent-wide, though. It's not rocket science. I choose to end with the 2010 World Cup semi-arbitrarily, which is just as well because those were quite good. Well, one was fairly dull, because ITV had two sponsors again. Lucozade Sport just went with the usual faintly ominous sporting power imagery.
Lucozade Sport, proud sponsor of ITV's coverage of the 2010 FIFA World Cup.
As far as I can tell, this one film is the only one they made, shown over and over during the month-long tournament. Never a good idea, that. However, the other sponsors were much more memorable. They were Hyundai, although being British we still tend to pronounce it Hyundai. And they went to considerable effort to be silly, which is always welcome, staging their own five-a-side World Cup for cars.
The Hyundai World Championship 2010, the sleekest models in the world showroom coming together for a feast of football.
The stings were narrated, or more accurately commented upon, by the late Peter Brackley, who was also an occasional stand-up comic and a skilled impressionist.
Spain really on the accelerator now and playing with such confidence too. And he scores! tremendous and leads the race for the Golden Wheel.
In truth, these aren't particularly funny per se, not blaming Brackley.
The Brazilians really are in need of a response. And they're getting one here. Oh, look at this! Look at this! It's a fantastic goal!
Oh. But then they generally weren't going for that. The humour, or the entertainment value at least, lies in the absurdity of what they're doing, and the perhaps greater absurdity of the fact that they're doing it at all.
It's the half-time hairdryer treatment from both coaches. I'm not sure, though, that the Spanish guys are quite giving it their full attention.
In this way, it's an evocation of one of the key tenets of the great philosopher Yankovic. Dare to be stupid. I'm sure it will please you to learn that this game was won, like the whole tournament, by the Spanish.
Amazing scenes here as 1,000 parking tickets are put to good use and Spain celebrate victory.
Since then, it's been sponsored by the likes of Santander, Google Android, and even KFC.
Oh, someone's late for kick-off. And that's why KFC Delivery sponsors ITV's coverage of the FIFA World Cup.
It's never someone in fashionable or utilitarian like Domestos, or Aquafresh, or some kind of jam. It's too working class. And I know what you're thinking about KFC, but they pander to the working class. They're not that thing themselves. Actually, I'll tell a lie, there was Screwfix at one point. That was refreshing. For me, the best ones were the ones that organically complemented the title sequences themselves, like Euro 96. If you're going to use our status as essentially a captive audience to a live event to sell us things while you have our attention, at least have some class and a sense of style about it. See? They tied safety in with the save, when they could have made it about the men in the wall protecting their bollocks. Class. You just sat through a Bob the Fish production. Nice! If you haven't already, you absolutely must check out bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds more videos not unlike that one, adding up to days worth of entertainment and all absolutely free. But if you're not a cold-hearted skinflint, you can always support us on Patreon. For as little as anything at all, you can make programmes like the one you just watched possible in the first place, and become eligible for bonus material such as glimpses of the book I'm writing about the BBC, monthly riffings on random commercial breaks, the complete archives of the angry political satire magazine Two Sons, and even the odd very occasional bonus video essay unavailable anywhere else. If nothing else, you should prevent me from starving and or freezing to death in the foreseeable future, so that'll be nice. No pressure or anything. bobthefish.org.uk. You make it what it is.